Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Katelyn and I like to film eyeshadow palette ranking and review videos, mainly focusing on indie makeup, but occasionally have some some mainstream makeup in there as well. So if you like eyeshadow palettes or you like indie makeup, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post 2 videos every single week, even though I didn't do that the last 2 weeks because I was on vacation. But other than that, it's 2 videos every week. If you're not new here, my face is happy that you're seeing it again. And I am so excited for today's video. So if you're not familiar with the palette Palooza, this is a concept that I am stealing from Miss Katie Marie. I will make sure to link her channel down below, as well as one of her more recent Palette Palooza videos. She basically does an in-depth review of palettes that she's been trying out and then also shows looks that she does with the palettes. So that's what we're going to be doing today. My face might be covered or part of my body might be covered because I'm putting pictures of looks that I've done like wherever. So if you see those pop up, they're with the palette that I'm talking about. But anyways, I have 10 palettes the first 10 palettes that I purchased this year that I'm ready to review for all of you. Now, to explain the criteria of when they're done, I have to have used every single shade in the palette at least 1 time and have to have used the palette 3 or more times. I don't take pictures of my makeup every single day, so you might only see a couple of looks here and there with the palettes, but I have to have used the palette at least 3 times. One of those times wearing it all day. Normally I wear my makeup all day. Occasionally I don't, but most of the time that makeup's on all day. But anyways, that is what I'm saying that I need to do to be able to give fully fleshed out thoughts in these videos. So if this is intriguing to you, you should go ahead and hit that thumbs up and go ahead and keep on watching as well. If you're curious about what 10 palettes I'm going to be talking about, I will have all of the palettes linked down below if they are still available for purchase. Some of the links might be affiliate links because there are some brands that I do have affiliate links with or codes. So definitely check that in the description box down below. Some of them, if they don't have a link because they're discontinued, I'll just write discontinued or sold out or whatever next to it. Anyways, I am going to do this in sort of a ranking order. So the bottom, it's gonna go least favorite to most favorite, but honestly, once you get to the top, I like all of them. You know what I mean? So anyways, this is more about the review itself. So first up is actually going to be the Pastel Roses A Tale of Frozen Dreams palette. This is what the inside of the palette looks like if you've never seen it. I also will link the videos, and if I have any dedicated videos doing looks with any of these palettes, I will link that in the description box down below as well. But anyways, obviously I will also be putting up the looks, but if you want the tutorials and stuff, check the description box. Anyways, this palette, and I have some criteria that I want to chat about for each palette as well. So what I first want to talk about is my favorite shade from this palette is the shade Daydream, which is this pink green duochrome, and I don't think I'll pick it up on camera, but it's like a pastel-y pink with a lime green shift. It's absolutely stunning. My least favorite shade in this palette is the matte black. It's just not the most pigmented matte black that I've ever used. It's not my favorite. I didn't love it. Yeah, so that's that. This is a UK-based brand, and I believe their shadows are all handmade. But anyways, it is a UK-based brand, so converting the cost to dollars, this is $42 and 79 cents. And I mean, I'll get into that in a second, but let's talk about the packaging. So I think it's really cute how they have it kind of look like a storybook, and you have these silver metal corners. I think that's really cute. It's small, compact, the cardboard feels nice. My issue is that the mirror, I don't know why I was going to try and show you the mirror. You're not going to be able to see it. It's just going to reflect back my camera. But anyways, the mirror is very warped, and when I was trying to do looks with this palette, using this mirror, it was just weird, and it freaked me out, and it just was super trippy. I didn't like it. So I would always pull in a hand mirror, and personally, I don't mind if palettes don't have mirrors, and so I almost feel I'd rather not have a mirror than a really cheap warped mirror. I just don't even just don't even put one in, is kind of my 2 cents. So yeah, the packaging I think is cute. It's just not my favorite. And then the mirror really threw me off. So some tips, like as far as if you liked this. So let me backtrack for a second. Any of these palettes, if you really like this color story and you want this palette, I'm never going to be somebody that says, don't buy this or go ahead and buy it. That's up to you. You make your own purchasing decisions. I'm just going to share my experience of the products with you. Anyways, this palette, I felt like I needed to build the mattes up. I like needed to pack them on and then lightly blend. They're not the most pigmented right off the bat, but I did feel like they built up okay. I was able to get them where I wanted them. Same with the black, like I was able to get it to be pretty pigmented. It just wasn't the most pigmented right off the bat. My overall rating of the palette, I think I would give this a 6 out of 10. I'm just overall not super impressed with it. It was my first time trying the brand and it just kind of made me go, meh. I was really excited about this because I had never tried the brand before, but there's not any like issues. The shimmers last a decent amount of time. The reason I have this one last is because these shimmers crease a little bit faster than its counterpoint, but they still don't, they between both palettes, like I think the Pastel Roses, their shimmer formula takes the longest time to crease on me compared to like pretty much any other shimmer formula. So the shimmer formula is good, I think. The mattes formula is okay. It's not anything to write home about, but the shimmers are also very, and you can kind of see it if I put it close, you can see that they're really messy. So they're that really sparkly formula. So there's sparkle everywhere. It's exploded in my palette, which again, doesn't always bother me, but I don't know. There's just something about this palette. Like there's no quality issues. There's nothing that's wrong with it. I just didn't jive with it. So I'm actually gonna end up decluttering this. I just held on to it for the purposes of this video, but I've used every shade. I've played with it, I think 3 times, maybe 4. I feel like I reached for these 2 palettes as little as possible because I just didn't enjoy playing with them. But anyways, yeah, those are my thoughts on the A Tale of Frozen Dreams palette by the Pastel Roses. So I'm already holding it, but in the next spot we have the Gingerbread Factory palette from the Pastel Roses. And if you've watched my monthly rankings, I usually rank this one lower than the Frozen Dreams palette, but the last time I used it, I realized I wore an eyeshadow look from this palette. It was just like a neutral look, but I wore it for like 12 hours and it looked the exact same at the end of the day as it did at the start of the day. Like it did not budge, it did not move. And I just thought that was really impressive. I think the black in the outer corner faded a little bit, but anyways, so that's why I have this one a little bit higher. Let me just fold this back so we can actually just hold it like this. My favorite shade in this palette is the shade Praline, which is kind of this like pinky brown duochrome shade. I think that's really pretty. My least favorite shade is Coffee, similar to the last one, the like black. It's just not the most pigmented black I've used. This palette is $38 US dollars and 61 cents. It is a little bit cheaper because there's less duochromes, or I don't even know if this is technically a duochrome, this Praline shade. It just kind of has like it's almost like a brown base with like a pink shimmer, whereas these have more of the duochrome scent. So anyways, that was why the Frozen Dreams one is more expensive and this one is a little bit cheaper. This one also has the really warped mirror. I feel like given that these shadows are handmade, I think the packaging is pretty nice for that, but it's just not my favorite. It doesn't like, I don't know. It's cute, but it's just not like, I don't know, doesn't save the palette for me, I guess. The quality of the shadows is really good on this one. I do feel like glitter glue for actually both of these. If you're interested in these palettes, you're gonna want glitter glue for those shimmers. They are like I said earlier, the sparkly kind of fallout type shimmers. If you have glitter glue, less fallout. So that's what I would recommend. Same rating as the other one, 6 out of 10. I'm just overall disappointed with these. I really, really wanted to love these. You know, you go into trying a new brand hoping you're gonna find like your new favorite brand, and that just didn't happen for me. I don't foresee myself reaching for these palettes again, so I am going to declutter them. But like I said, hung on to them for the purposes of this video. Next up is the Adept Cosmetics La Cienega palette. So if you're not familiar, this is the palette that Adept did in their mystery box. I did purchase the mystery box. It was this palette and 8 liners. You can see my video that will be linked down below to hear my thoughts on that. I do believe you can get this palette now, but again, check my description box. I will indicate all of that in there. So by far my favorite shade in this palette is the shade Manhattan Beach. This is such a gorgeous, like, opal multi-chrome shimmer. It is so good. Adept always knocks their shimmers out of the park. They are the best thing about the brand. So if you're somebody who's really into shimmers and you haven't tried Adept, I would highly recommend that you do it. If you're not that into shimmers, you know, I don't know if Adept is for you. I will say the shade Hermosa Beach, which is a shimmer in this palette, is not quite as shimmery, sparkly, special as most of their shimmers. These two right here aren't really multi-chromes or duochromes, Redondo Beach and PCH, but they're still like very foiled. This one, I don't know, I just didn't feel like it gave me Adept vibes when I used it. But anyways, my least favorite shade in this palette is Inglewood, and that's only because I feel like you have two very light toned mattes that do not look that different on the eye. So I think you could have swapped this out for a different matte color and given a little bit more variety to the palette. I don't think you needed both Wilshire and Inglewood. Wilshire is lighter, so I feel like it maybe could do more than Inglewood. I don't know. Anyways, I just picked it because I was like, these two shades are pretty similar, so I don't think you need both. That's the gist of that. The cost of this palette, I believe right now when you buy it individually, is $50. So that's a lot. And let's see, the packaging. So Adept typically does their faux leather packaging. This is almost like, it's not canvas. Maybe it is canvas. I don't know what material you would call this. Kind of feels like canvas, but like sturdier. I don't know. It's just not their faux leather packaging. I prefer the faux leather packaging, but I don't think this is bad. I do like that you have the raised name here. I think it's nice. It's pretty basic as far as packaging goes. Mirror's nice though. No issues with the mirror on this one. Definitely for Adept, you always want to use glitter glue with their shimmers. They even say that on their website. Their shimmers perform better with glitter glue. They are more of like a flaky, putty-like texture. So if you have the glitter glue, there's something for those shimmers to adhere to your eye with. The mattes in here are, I think, better than mattes I've tried from Adept in the past. They are a more buildable formula. You're not getting a ton of pigment right off the bat, but they did build, whereas I feel, and they blended out really nicely. I feel like with Adept in the past, I haven't not been able to blend. So I like this. I'm keeping this palette. I'm not going to declutter this one. I do enjoy it. Overall, I would rate this one a 7 out of 10. There's something missing in this palette to make it like a perfect like neutral palette with these really special shimmers. There's just like not quite there, but I really like it and I do think it has a place in my collection. It's just not, it's not a love for me, you know? But I did really enjoy playing with this palette. I liked it a lot. Okay, next up we have the BellaBeauteBar Star-Crossed Lovers palette. So this palette launched a while ago, but I believe they launched it in like their new updated matte formula. This palette, my favorite shades are Star-Crossed right here, which is this purple, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a purple mint duochrome, and then Vendetta, which is like a purple blue duochrome. Listen, I love duochrome multi-chromes. My husband even says that. He's like, I always ask him when I get a new palette, I go, oh, what's your favorite shade? And he points to some random color and he says, what's your favorite? And he's like, you always like the sparkly shifty ones. Like, I do. So anyways, those are my favorite. My least favorite shade is Dagger. This is actually a multi-chrome. Now that I've said that, this is a multi-chrome up in the top corner. I just feel like it's similar to Rivalry, and this formula I didn't love. I didn't feel like it did much for me on my lid. So I just wasn't a huge fan of Dagger, but I really liked the matte formula in this palette. I thought it was pretty nice. This palette is $49 US, and I do have a code with BellaBeauteBar. It is KATELYNHOUSEMAKEUP. I want to say, or is it KATELYNHOUSE? I don't know. I will have it written down below if you are curious, or maybe I'll put it on the screen if you want to know. But it saves 10% off. Oh, I feel like the cardboard packaging, and if you've never tried BellaBeauteBar, the cardboard packaging kind of reminds me of like the quality of cardboard packaging from Unearthly. I feel like that's a brand more people will have tried. Although I will say this is not smooth. This is more of like a matte texture on the front. So it's a little bit different, but overall I feel like it's kind of similar. Mirrors are fine. The only mirrors I have issues with are the Pastel Roses palette. So if you don't hear me mention how the mirror is, just know that it's probably fine. I will say that the BellaBeauteBar formula definitely has some of these chunky, flaky shimmers, so you're gonna sense where the theme is. We're gonna wanna use glitter glue with this to help minimize fallout. I felt like this palette I would rate a 8 out of 10. I really like the color story. I really like the performance of the shimmers, and I did enjoy the mattes. Now, BellaBeauteBar's mattes tend to be on the more thin, slightly needing to be built up vibe, but if I'm able to get it to where I need it to go, I'm okay with it. So 8 out of 10 on this one. I think that the shimmers really are the star of the show, but it does lean like a little bit more on the monochromatic side. So it's not quite a perfect palette because, you know, there's only so much you can do with it, but I do think it's really pretty. And if you like a purple, pink, red color story, I think this is great. It's a great palette for that color story. Next up, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Surrender palette. This is the palette that came in Unearthly's Valentine's Day mystery box. So I don't know the price on this one. The mystery box was $100 and it came with this, 3 liquid lipsticks, and a glowing blush highlighter palette. So I don't know. I don't know how to price that out. Let's take a look at the inside. This is the inside of the palette. I think it's a perfect Valentine's Day color story. My favorite shade in this palette was the shade Seductive. This is a multi-chrome, duochrome type of shade. It goes from like red orange to like a greenish gold, and I just think it's really pretty, and it looks really, really pretty on the lid. I remember I wore this shadow for when I was going to my aunt. I think I was actually wearing this exact wig. Anyways, I was going to my aunt and uncle's house for somebody's birthday, and I caught like my reflection in the car. Like I was in the backseat. I think my mom was driving. Anyways, whatever. You don't care about all that. But I caught my reflection either in my phone or in my mirror or whatever. I was touching something up, and I saw this shift so well on my lid, and I was like, that is incredible. So anyways, that's why that's my favorite shade. My least favorite shade, I don't really have one. Now, you might be surprised because I don't typically like red eyeshadow, but to me, this Surrender shade serves a purpose in this palette, especially given that it's a Valentine's Day themed palette. I'm not going to complain about a red eyeshadow in a Valentine's Day themed palette because that's on me. If I don't want a red eyeshadow, I shouldn't have bought a Valentine's Day themed palette. You know what I'm saying? So no least favorite shade in here. I think everything performed super well and everything has its job, and there's not really a ton of overlap in here. So I'm happy with the color story quite a bit, or I'm really happy with the color. I don't know what I was trying to say. Anyways, this is the nice like weighted cardboard, kind of what I was trying to describe with the BellaBeauteBar. This one I will say does feel a little bit more weighted than the BellaBeauteBar palette. This one has a little bit more weight to it, so it feels a tiny bit more luxurious than maybe the Star-Crossed Lovers palette, and it's got not the matte front, so it feels like slightly more luxurious, but they both have the really solid like cardboard packaging, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Anyways, as far as tips for this palette, I feel like everything worked amazing. I don't know if I needed glitter glues with these. I think I might have just even used Fix Plus. I never apply a shimmer without Fix Plus or glitter glue. It's one or the other. I always do one of those. So I can't say like if I went in with it just dry or on my finger, if that makes a difference. I don't test that out because I just try to do my makeup the way I like to do it. So now that I've like talked about how amazing this palette is, how much I like it, I'm probably gonna surprise everybody and say I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10 as well. Similar to the Star-Crossed Lovers palette, this palette is like purple red. This one has a little bit more variety because you can go kind of neutrally-ish with it, but it's like a purple and red palette because it's a Valentine's Day palette. So I don't know that there's a ton of variety. There is more than the Star-Crossed Lovers palette, but the Star-Crossed Lovers palette has those like really sparkly special shimmers, so that's why they both got 8s out of 10 for me. But I think they're both really nice. I like them a lot. So yeah, anyways. We'll keep it moving. I will say I don't think you can get this palette anymore. Like I said, it was in their Valentine's Day box. Another palette that you can't get anymore because it was limited edition is the Adept Cosmetics Arrow Inspired palette. So let's look at this bad boy here. Obviously, you can see this palette is right up my alley. Look at all those special shimmers. Yeah, that's why this palette is where it is. My favorite shade is Harold Bachman. This is so similar to the shade Trance from the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume 4. And there's something about that like bluish royal purple in a shimmer form that it's to die for. It's so gorgeous. So that's my favorite shade. And then my least favorite shade was Edward Rasmus, I think it is. It's this dark teal matte. I felt like that matte didn't blend and pack on as well as the other mattes. I felt like I got some patchiness with that matte, but the rest of the mattes I didn't have any issues with. So I definitely had to finesse that matte a little bit more, and I think I might have ended up just putting a shimmer over the top of it to just call it a day. This palette was $68 when it initially launched. It does have the faux leather packaging. It has this really cool metal decal on the front, and the mirror is good quality. The pans are magnetic, so you can move their Adept's pans around, which I think is a huge plus, especially if you like to build your own color stories. Like, I just think that's a really nice feature to be able to do that. I believe the Unearthly palettes and I think the Unearthly palette and then the other Adept palette are the two that we've talked about so far that I also believe have magnetic packaging, but I'm not 100%. The same thing with the La Cienega palette. You're going to want to use glitter glue with the shimmer shades. That's what Adept always recommends, so you just should do what they say. And then the like, if you're trying to blend out Edward Rasmus and obviously Hannibal Bates is the lighter shade, there's like such a big jump between the two. You kind of want to dip back and forth between them to get a nice blend. That's what I found ended up working, but like I said, Edward Rasmus still ended up getting a little bit patchy in there. But yeah, overall, so, funny story. Overall, I would rate this palette a 7.5 out of 10. And I know I put it above the 8s out of 10, but I just feel like that is due to the fact that I really love the shimmer shades. And if I only focused on the shimmer shades, I think this palette would be ranked higher. But because I had to incorporate the mattes that I didn't like as much, I put it at like a 7.5 rating. But I really like these shimmer shades. So I don't know, you can't trust me. I also wrote like my ratings of these and like my notes for myself. It's over here on my iPad. If you see me like looking over, that's what I'm looking at, reference. And yeah, so long story short, I don't know that I can be trusted with how I'm rating these. It is what it is. Okay, keeping it moving. Let's do the Simply Posh Cosmetics Berry Icy Palette. I did just get a code with Simply Posh. I believe the code is Katelyn, but I will have that in the description box down below. It also saves 10%. Anyways, this is what the inside of the palette looks like. My absolute favorite shade is Bittersweet. I just think this is a gorgeous, like, purpley gold multi-chrome or duochrome, whatever it is. Especially if you want to get like a more neutral look. It's just stunning. It's just so, so pretty. It's so sparkly. They have such a great matte formula and shimmer formula. It's just so good. My least favorite shade is, I guess if I had to pick one, it would be Wildberry, but only because it's like more red. And like I didn't need a red in this palette, you know? And this isn't a Valentine's Day palette, so I don't have to have red eyeshadow if I don't want it. But like I said, that's totally personal preference. There's nothing wrong with the shade. It performed fine. The cost of this palette is $45 US, full price, but you could get 10% off. They also had this palette on sale the other day. So if they still have it on sale, you should definitely grab it if you are interested. This one also has the weighted like cardboard. It's a little bit thinner than the Unearthly one, but it's still that nice cardboard that has, I don't know what that coating would be, but it's like a laminated coating, you know. Mirror's nice. These pans are also magnetic, so you can move shades around with the other Simply Posh palettes, which, like I said, I think is a great feature. I don't really have any tips for using these palettes or using this palette. Similar to the Unearthly one, it worked really well. So if you want to use a glitter primer, cool. If you want to use Fix Plus or whatever setting spray to spray your brush just to wet your brush and get the shadows wet, that's also cool. I can't speak for using the shades dry because I don't do that, but the mattes worked out really well. Everything blended nicely. Every time I used this palette, I loved the look that I was able to come up with, so I'm a big fan of that one. Oh, my rating. I would rate this palette a 9 out of 10. It's really good. There's nothing that, like, it's just not like, oh, this is the perfect palette and I could like just use this and be totally happy. That's what I'm looking for with a 10 out of 10. But this is a 9 out of 10. It's pretty close. Okay. Next up is my Ensley Rain and Brittany Huffman collab. This is the Midwinter Dream palette. I really held out on buying this palette because it is $88.80 before you use any code. I do have a code also with Ensley Rain, which is, I want to say KATELYNHOUSE. I'm sorry, all of my codes are different and I need to figure out how to get them all on the same page. But anyways, this palette is gorgeous. I held out on buying it because I was super upset when they launched this palette like 30 minutes before they said they were going to, and then they were already sold out by the time like the actual launch time came. So I was a little bit salty about that. And then I know they did an initial pre-order, but I was like, nah, I'm not getting it. Like there's no point. I'm not going to be one of the first people to review it. Like I just, whatever. Anyways, then I had massive FOMO seeing everybody's looks with this palette. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to buy it for myself and I'll just use it. And if I can't do content with it, it's fine. And I am so happy that I bought this palette. I love this palette. It is so good. My favorite shade, every single shimmer, almost every single shimmer. Oh, I accidentally swatched a shade. I don't know what shade I hit. Probably NYX. Literally almost all the shimmers are my favorite shade. There's one shimmer that I don't like, and I'll just point out that that's my least favorite shade. That's Hibernal Solstice. That's the only shade, like shimmer shade, that's like not that special. Reflection and Midwinter aren't necessarily like multi-chrome, duochrome shades, but I still think they're really pretty on the lid. But literally every other shimmer I love. So it's really just Hibernal Solstice, this one right here. That's the only shimmer I didn't really like. It was just kind of lackluster. The rest of the shimmers are amazing. I love them. And I love this palette. I thought the mattes performed pretty well, and I think it's an interesting like matte color story to be able to get like a variety of looks with it. So I really liked this palette. Some of these shimmer shades are that crumbly, flaky texture. So glitter glue is going, glitter glue or glitter primer, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be your best friend. There are a lot of shimmers to only a few matte, like that ratio. So it's a very shimmer heavy palette. I don't mind it, but it's just not quite a perfect palette. So I'm giving this palette a 9 out of 10 as well, but I really, really love this palette. I think this palette is amazing, and I'm so happy I got it. Started to say grabbed and got it. So I said gobbed it, but I meant grabbed it. Got it, whatever. All right, second to last palette. I'm out of breath. Okay, my second to last palette is the, okay, the last two palettes honestly are tied. So like, just know that. I love them both equally. Anyways, the palette I'm going to pick here is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Lure palette. This is what the inside of the palette looks like. There is no mirror, but like I said, I don't mind if there's no mirror, just don't give me a crappy mirror. Anyways, my favorite shade is Pearl. Actually, I have two favorite shades. Pearl and Lost at Sea, this like light minty matte. I know I picked a matte as my favorite shade. That's weird. And then Pearl, the multi-chrome shade, because that I am still who I am. But I think both of those shades are incredible. Honestly, I really love this palette. The shade that I have two least favorite shades, and it's it's the Deep and Explore. And the reason that they're my two least favorite is because there's not quite enough of a variation between the two for me personally. I feel like when I tried to blend out the Deep with Explore, it just looks like I put more of the Deep on there. So I feel like either the Deep needed to be darker or Explore could have been like a tiny bit lighter, just to get more of a variation between the two. And oh, what I was gonna say, so like I said earlier, I don't care if you don't have a mirror as long as you don't put it like a crappy, like I would rather have no mirror than a crappy mirror. But also I don't really need a mirror on a large palette anyway, because I don't necessarily hold these palettes to do my makeup. I tend to leave these on my desk, so that's fine as well. The packaging overall though is super cute. I mean, look, you have these scales, you can kind of feel them, they're textured glitter on the front. It gives the mermaid vibes, and it's a nice decent size. It's smaller than the Blend Bunny palettes tend to be, and the cost of this palette is $46 US. I will say when I scratched my leg. I will say when I had blended, I did like an all blue look basically with this palette, and I did feel like the blues needed a little bit more help blending than any of the other mattes when I had used them. So just be mindful of that. Those blues require a little bit more finessing, but the rest of the mattes are amazing. I love them. Most of the mattes blend themselves, so it's really like the blues it wasn't that they were like terrible, it's just that they didn't blend themselves like the other mattes do. Like you can just like tap some of the shades on, especially if you're going in the monochromatic row, and they just kind of blend themselves. Like Blend Bunny's mattes are amazing. They melt into themselves. The blues did not. They did require some effort. So that is that. That was really it, I think, as far as my thoughts on this palette. I really love all the looks that I created with this palette. I had a blast playing with it. I will say I didn't reach for this palette as much as I thought I was going to, but when I did looks with this palette, they were some of my favorite looks I've done this year so far. So I'm also going to give this palette a 9 out of 10 just because it's really nice. I think had those blue mattes blended like perfectly easily for me, it might have been like a 9.5 out of 10. But I want to give it a 9 out of 10 because I did have some issues with those. So that it's just not quite perfect. The one that I kind of have tied with that one, but I love them both equally, but it's the Nomad Cosmetics Love and Death palette. It has the double mirrors here, so let me flip it so that you can see and try and hold this. It is hard to like hold this palette. Okay, we'll hold it like that. Anyways, my favorite shade of this palette is Juliet, which is this blue shimmery shade right here. I just love the color of it. I just think it's so, so gorgeous. And my least favorite shades are Rose and Light, and it's these two mattes right here. And the reason they're my least favorite is kind of similar to what we've seen in some other palettes. They're so similar that I feel like we could have swapped one of these out and gotten a little bit more variety in the mattes we had to work with over here. So I think had we just taken, and honestly Balcony's kind of similar too, so had you, Balcony and Light are different enough from each other that I feel like had you swapped Rose out for like, I don't know, like a white, like a pinky white duochrome maybe, I'm not sure, honestly I don't know, or like a darker purple, I don't know, but I just think like one more slight variation to the mattes over here and it would have been like my perfect palette, would have been 10 out of 10, but anyways, it is very close. So like that's just like a really nitpicky thing to pick on. And maybe it's my issue because I don't really love reds in the first place, but actually I really do love the shade Love. It's a really nice like orangey red. This palette is $47 and packaging I will give a 10 out of 10 just on the theming and the design. I think the fact that they came in here for Verona doing a Romeo and Juliet inspired palette, I love that. I absolutely adore that, and that they made it like their Love and Death, Amore y Morte palette. Like, I just think that's incredible. And you have like the love side, the death side. I know a lot of people got mad because they felt like this is really hard to use the mirror in it because it has the split, but I just think it makes so much sense with the theming of it and how they did the packaging. Like, it makes sense to me. Also, pro tip, if you did get this palette and you were like, how am I supposed to use it? Here's what I did. I just held my palette like this so that I used 1/2 of the mirror. So I'm like purposefully blocking my face so you can see, but I just basically did my makeup like this. So like whichever side I was working on, I just held it like that. And I didn't feel like it was that different from any other palette. So really, really like the packaging. Love it. Like I said, 10 out of 10. It is kind of a big palette because there's 18 shades, so it's one of the bulkier ones to hold. So it might be a good one to just leave on your desk and like dip into it and use a handheld mirror. But like I said, I also held it the other way and I didn't think it was that bad. Tips. So I'm sure some of you saw some reviews where people were saying that these shades Cupid and Romeo were very hard pressed. Mine, I was able to like push my finger hard enough that I was able to get the shimmers to come up and be able to be used. The brand came out and said that they did have a batch of these palettes where those two shades were harder pressed than they should have been, and they were offering replacements to people because they weren't working the way that they were supposed to. So if you have that issue, I would reach out to the brand, but personally for me, I was able to get mine to work and I really like those shades. So I think that, you know, sometimes the harder press shades, if you just like agitate the pan enough, you can get it to come up. My overall rating on this palette is a 9.75 out of 10. I feel like my only issue is that there was like just too much similarity between the mattes, but you can see that they have a tonal difference. So they're not the exact same, but they're pretty similar on the eye. But that's my only issue. Otherwise, I think this palette is amazing. The theming, the packaging, the color story, everything really speaks to me. I really, really enjoy that palette quite a lot. I put all of those looks on the screen while we were chatting, so let me know which look you saw down below, if there was one that was your favorite, or if there was a palette within these 10 that you're like, oh my gosh, I love that palette and you didn't like that much, or whatever. I just love chatting makeup with everybody in the comments, so I'd be curious to hear from all of you. And with that, I will see you all next time.